The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, July 29th. Hope everybody is having a great week. I don't know, how did you guys survive with no Yaron Brook shows for, what was it, over a week? God, that was one of the longest stretches we've gone of no shows. So I hope you all survived. I hope you did well. Maybe cleared your minds. A little bit less news. I mean, that is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. All right. Schedule's still going to be a little iffy, spotty in the next few days. Maybe a show tomorrow, maybe not. And then Saturday there'll be a show, and Sunday there'll be a show, and then we'll probably take Monday, Tuesday off, and then start up Wednesday, more regular shows after that. All right, I was traveling. I was in Austin, Texas, to do a 2-day seminar with Don Watkins on capitalism to a local oil and gas business in Austin, and that was a lot of fun and I think well received and good content and good discussion, good debate. So that was fun. It's always interesting to talk to people in the trenches, the businessmen who actually have to deal with the bad press and have to deal with the regulators and have to deal with the politics of it all. And have to deal with their children coming back from college or high school, calling them greedy, greedy something. Yeah. Oivit said, I stopped by Calypso. That's right. I had one of those odysseys. No, I mean, I did have 5 flights. 3 were late. One late was so late that it caused me to miss the flight. It was from the perspective of flying, it was the trip from hell. I mean, it was terrible, just awful. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's me. I don't know what the airlines have against me. And it wasn't just one airline. It was 3 different airlines, all screwed up. It was not fun. The flying was not fun. Anyway, Austin, then Phoenix. I did 2 Jordan Peterson courses, 8 hours on Ayn Rand, probably closer to 9+ hours on Ayn Rand. That was really cool. It was great to get the content out there. There were just a few students, but there were a couple of students who'd never read Ayn Rand, and some of the people like in the they were filming and lights and audio and people like that, and they all said, oh, they were already buying Ayn Rand books on Amazon during the course. So if my goal was to get people to read the book, then at least in that small sample audience, it worked. And then now we'll see what happens when this is get unleashed on the Jordan Peterson general audience. And I did not hold anything back, so it was a good. I think it was a good course. I wish I had another couple of weeks to prep for it, but I think it turned out well. And then I did a course on venture capital and private equity, and that was just fun. So that was great. So, and then a day flying back to Puerto Rico because delayed flights and everything else from and time zone changes from Phoenix. Anyway, that is it. Tomorrow evening, flying to Lisbon. So I'm going to see some of you in Lisbon. I know there's already a talk scheduled in Lisbon. It's a little jazz club in Lisbon. So I'm going to be talking about art, Ayn Rand's view of art. So that'll be fun. That's, I think, on the 9th of August. And I'll fill you in on other events that are happening in Europe once we get to Europe and are scheduled there. But yes, traveling in the next few days, some more traveling in the next few days until I get to Lisbon. And then, when I'm in Lisbon, I have to fly to Norway, southwest Norway, to give a talk, and then I fly right back to Lisbon. So I'm spending I think it's, clearly less than 24 hours in Norway. I think something like 18 hours in Norway. I fly in, I go to sleep, I wake up, have breakfast, go speak. They take me to the airport, I fly out. So that is my Norway adventure next week. So that's coming up really, really fast. I have to get to Europe first because the flight is from Lisbon. I'm tired just telling you about all this. It's exhausting. All this traveling is exhausting. It really is. All right. Reminder, you can ask questions. I know AJ was asking about a $250 question. So yeah, feel free to jump in and ask it. And you guys should ask questions. I know you probably got what, 10 days worth of questions bottled up that you would like to ask and didn't have a chance to ask, and now is your opportunity. And of course, you can support the show with a sticker. All right, let's jump into the news. That's what you're ultimately here to hear. So we will talk about that. Let's see. All right, yeah. Whoa, it's getting kind of boring. But I was gone for I don't know, 7, 8, 9 days, and nothing new is happening. Well, I mean, a bunch new is happening, but nothing new, significant is happening. Trump announced kind of a pause of firing at Iran, and the Iranians paused. And there's negotiations going on in the background, and supposedly there's some kind of deal that the Iranians were going to have with the Omanis about opening up a new channel out of the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, negotiations, and Trump wants a deal, and there's going to be a deal, and the Iranians are constantly begging him for a deal, he says. And, clearly the Iranians, for whatever reason, primarily because they are quite happy and capable of suffering and inflicting great suffering on their own people. There's a blockade on their oil supply. Remember all the people who said, and I think I quoted them as saying, that they couldn't maintain the blockade, that Iran would fold because the blockade, they couldn't turn off the oil wells because it would take them years to very, very difficult to turn them back on. Somehow they're surviving. Somehow the blockade is not really forcing them to panic. Nobody really knows what's happening to the oil industry inside Iran, but somehow they're surviving it. The Iranians are only being further emboldened. We'll talk about the ammunition shortage in the United States, which is one of the explanations, supposedly, for why Trump is hesitant to go all out against the Iranians, is that we're short of munitions. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's incomprehensible what Trump is doing. It's a complete disaster. He can't explain it. None of his people can explain it. They try to rationalize it constantly, but it's so obviously irrational, and it's so obvious there's no strategy, and it's so obvious they went into this war with no strategy, thinking that if they just bombed the Iranians would give up, just like the Venezuelans, I guess, and not even considering the need to figure out how to open the Strait of Hormuz. So, anyway, I feel bad for the military because the military is better than this. I hope very much that the military is better than this, that they had plans, that they could open the Strait of Hormuz if they needed to, that they could do all this stuff. And, let's just assume Trump is the one not letting them actually do it, not stopping them from doing it, because he's afraid. He's afraid of American casualties. He's afraid of failure. Anyway, there was a pause. There was a pause until there wasn't. The Iranians figured, the Americans claim they're running out of munitions. They don't seem to really want to engage in this war. Let's see how we let's see how much we can poke them. Let's poke them, and let's see what happens if we keep poking and keep poking and keep poking and see what happens. So, at 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time, I guess yesterday, the Iranians launched a missile attack, surprise missile attack, as if the Americans can't see the missiles launch. But yeah, surprise missile attack on a U.S. base in Jordan. And this was the first attack since Trump had paused strikes. And now Jordan intercepted the Iranian missiles with, I guess, Patriot and Thud or whatever they're using. I guess American munitions. Maybe they have Israeli munitions there. I don't know. Maybe they have the Arrow 3. Maybe Israel has a battery of Arrow 3 in Jordan. I don't know. I have no information. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't shock me. And the Jordanians would never admit it. But would it shock you if, given the shortage of munitions on the American side, that Israel, who make their own munitions and have their own air defense systems in addition to Patriots and Thuds, didn't help out the Jordanians? I wouldn't be surprised at all. But anyway, Iran did knock them down and intercepted it. And then, as a consequence of that, right, or following that, the United States and Saudi Arabia together, as far as I know, maybe for the first time, at least for the first time, acknowledged. I think Saudi Arabia's been attacking Iran unacknowledged, but I think for the first time, acknowledged Saudi Arabia and the United States struck militias in Iraq. Not in Iran, Iranian militias in Iraq. And this is so they killed at least 20 fighters who are part of the Popular Mobilization Force, which is an Iranian-backed Iraqi militia. Supposedly, a number of these were fairly senior Iranian advisors. So, tit for tat, for tit for tat, for tat for tit, for tit for tat. It goes on and on and on. Now, while I wasn't doing the show, the Houthis decided to strike some Saudi oil facilities on the Red Sea. Remember, Saudi Arabia is funneling oil to the Red Sea as an alternative to going through the Strait of Hormuz. And the Houthis struck that. We don't know how much damage there is. They also struck a couple of Saudi tankers in the Red Sea. So Saudi Arabia started bombing the Houthis. So the Houthis and the Saudi Arabians are kind of going at it. The United States hasn't come to the aid of the Saudis yet. Again, why? I don't. There's no strategy, guys. There's just, I've told you this in the beginning. Nobody believed me. There's no 1D chess. There's no 2D chess. There's no 7D chess. There's no mind. There's no plan. There's no strategy. There's nothing. Now, it is true that Trump today, after the Iranians attacked the Jordanian base, promised to beat the shit out of them. And oil prices shot up to $88, still under the $100, but $88. And the stock market plummeted, but that's also got to do with the Fed. We'll talk about the Fed in a minute. But oil is up, and Trump is promising to beat the shit out of them. Nobody knows what that means because he said that. He says that all the time. Every week he says that. Edward says, Trump is going to hit the hard now. Edward has a direct line to the White House, and he knows because, every other time that Trump has said, we're going to hit them hard, we're going to destroy them, we're going to annihilate their civilization, we're going to destroy their power plants, Edward got a phone call immediately from the White House saying, no, we're not serious this time, but wait, we'll let you know when we really are serious. Like, this is every couple of days, Trump makes such an assertion and doesn't follow through on it. But somehow Edward knows this time he's serious. This time, they've gone too far. This time, I mean, what categorizes this time? I mean, the American soldiers who were killed in the Jordanian attack were killed over a week ago. And when that happened, Trump said, oh, they're going to pay a price. What price? What price? That's just a few days before Trump then said he's pausing. He's pausing because, I don't know. I have no insight into what's going on in back rooms. I do not know what his generals are advising him. I do not know if there's any kind of, weakness. And nothing, right? Trump has said we'll be hitting them hard on Fox, but he said that on Fox, I think 23 times now. I'm making the number up, but you get the point, right? You get the point. So, yeah, nothing new. There's no strategy. They don't know what they're doing. It's a complete disaster. The Iranians are so confident now. They're so confident now that they're initiating, right? Before it was like they'd blow up a tanker they'd attack a tanker in the strait. But now, after Trump declares a pause, a unilateral ceasefire, they attack an American base. They attack an American base. Trump met with Netanyahu. Israeli media is filled with reports that the meeting did not go well. But again, I wasn't there. I do not know. They had a meeting because Netanyahu was here for Lindsey Graham's funeral. Lindsey Graham was a big supporter of Israel, so Netanyahu came for the funeral. He used the opportunity to meet with Trump. He hasn't met with Trump in a long time. Outwardly, everything is fantastic, but I can tell you for certain that Netanyahu is unbelievably frustrated by what Trump is doing. He is, the Israelis generally, particularly the Israeli military, is just bewildered. They have no clue what is going on. They don't understand it. Israel's very much militarily, at least now, over the last couple of years, thinks strategically, and they don't understand what America is doing. It's a complete disaster. Yes, it continues the irrationality, the stupidity, the unthinking, and the lack of strategy continues. Oh, wait. This is how bold the Iranians are. A drone hit a floating storage tanker in Egypt. Nobody's taken attribution for it, but that can't happen, right? Without, it's either Iran or the Houthis, and the Houthis wouldn't do it without Iran. And, they're trying to shut down the Red Sea. They're trying to shut down the Suez Canal. They're trying to shut down trade, global trade. Or at least global trade that goes, they'll have to go around to Africa, which they've been doing anyway because insurance costs have gone up because nobody knows when the Houthis will start up again. So there's a lot of significant, the Iranians are showing significant confidence. Iran, as I said, rejected the proposal for of a Hormuz compromise that Oman was working on. Basically, the Iranians feel like they're winning out. And I think that the big thing is, oil prices going through the roof, $88 a Brent. It was down to, around 70. And, they think that they can just, and they're probably right, they can just wait Trump out on this. Okay, I thought we'd talk a little bit about the claim that there is this munition shortage and what that really means, why it's happening. But I also want to, because I think it's real, but I also want to kind of not just leave you with the sense that America is just pathetic. And I want to also give you a positive side of this, or positive things that are happening when it comes to military procurement, not just the negative. So, look, the United States is not literally running out of weapons like some people are arguing out there. There are certain weapon systems, there are certain particular missiles that the supply is running out, or running low, not running out, running low. And there was the fear that, these weapons are needed in the Middle East. Some of these weapons will be supplied to Ukraine. And yet, what happens if something happens in the Pacific? What happens if something happens vis-a-vis Taiwan? The United States is going to need a lot more than it has right now to deal with a Chinese threat. So for the existing threats, if you just had to worry about Iran and Ukraine, we'd probably be fine. The problem is you have to keep something in reserve just in case the Chinese want to take advantage of all this. Right? Here's the situation with regards to this. So the Patriot missiles, these are these are air defense systems. And this is crucial to taking down ballistic missiles, taking down hostile airplanes, if they were Chinese. And sadly, they've even been used against drones, which they shouldn't be used at. We should have other weapon systems to take out drones. Anyway, the estimate is, and these are all estimates because nobody really knows, but the estimates are that the inventory have fallen about 65%. So before the war with Iran, there were 2,330 Patriot missiles, and these are the interceptors themselves. And now there are somewhere between 759 and 827. So about a 65% decline. Now, that is a low number because, again, in a Chinese theater, just given the sheer number of aircraft and sheer number of ballistic missiles the Chinese could deploy, you're going to need all those and more. And the problem here is that the manufacturers of Patriot interceptors are really, 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 really slow. We'll talk about why in a minute, but it's very slow. So to get back to the 2,300 is going to take 3 years, assuming that all the manufacturers' promises are going to happen, and this will be the expansion will go successfully, and the Pentagon will allocate the funds, and that the bureaucracy will work. That's a big assumption. 3 years. THAAD interceptors. THAAD are the other layer of anti-ballistic missile and anti-aircraft. Their inventory has fallen from about 425, so a much smaller reliance on THAADs, to 234. That's 38% before pre-war level. And I think even pre-war level was already low because the United States sold a lot of and used quite a few THAADs in helping Israel defend itself against Iran earlier, before the United States actually entered the war. So again, these are very low levels. I mean, what do you do with 234 interceptors when you're facing China? Now, again, THAADs are very, 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 very slow. Very slow. Okay. So to get back to the numbers, to produce 200 of these, we're talking about late 2019. I mean, that's ridiculous. We're talking about 200 units. 3 years? 3.5 years? And then another one, which is, supposedly more than 1,000 Tomahawk missiles, cruise missiles, were fired during the 39-day Iran campaign. We make about 200 annually. So to get back with, again, late 2030, It's just unthinkable. Pathetic. SM-3s and SM-6s, these are naval interceptors. They have not been depleted that much, nothing like the Patriot or the THAAD, but they never had a lot of those to begin with. And again, lead times are 36 to 39 months. So again, to get back to where we were, early 2029. JASSM cruise missiles. Again, about 1,100 we used. These, I think, are, so pre-war inventory and existing production pipelines were much larger. So here, probably several months, maybe a year, to get back to where you need to be. Precision strike missiles, PRSMs. These are new and small inventory, and production is ramping up. These, within several months, you could have it back to where it was before. Now, 155 millimeter artillery shells. Now here, these are not shells that are being used in Iran. Iran is not an artillery war yet. At least I don't think so. Maybe some of the ships are using them. I don't know. But nothing in a major way. Most of this is being depleted because it's being sold to the Ukrainians. 3.6 million rounds, 3 million of which were transferred to Ukraine. Now, here, there have been efforts to expand production for a long time now, and all the targets have been missed. All the targets have been missed. So, real problems. Other anti-ship weapons, not really depleted by Iran, but they never had adequate inventories. And again, this is surprising because LRASM, which is an anti-ship weapon, you'd think you'd have a lot of those because that is a big chunk of what you would have to use against the Chinese. So, I go after Trump for having no strategy, and he has no strategy. But it's true when it comes to foreign policy and military and weapon systems. It's been true for several presidents. And there's no long-term thinking. I think certainly since Obama and Trump first term, and then Biden, and then Trump's second term, just no strategy, no manufacturing increase, no improvement in Pentagon procurement. So, we talked about this on a previous show, that the way defense procurement works is defense contractors try to have lots of little manufacturing plants all over the country so they can get as many congressmen on board to get those little factories working so that their constituencies benefit. And therefore, they don't centralize, they don't have scale, they can't produce in scale, they can't make quick changes. Very, 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 very bad production habits for these things, right? The United States has planned to increase, for example, the United States has planned to increase 155 millimeter shell production from approximately 14,000 rounds per month before Ukraine to 100,000 by October 2025. But as of March 2026, it was producing only about 36,000 a month. So they're producing about a third, and they're 6 months late already. A new 469 million General Dynamics plant in Mesquite, Texas, was supposed to manufacture 30,000 projectile bodies monthly. It has produced no conforming projectile bodies as of March 2026. Without that facility, the Pentagon Inspector General estimates projectile body capacity would reach only 71,000 a month. Now, it's not clear why the factory hasn't produced anything, why they haven't built it, what's going on. But this is very, very often, the inability of old-style military procurement to actually get results and get them. The whole industry of missiles and projectiles and is built around small peacetime orders for very sophisticated weapons, and there's not been any strategy around how do we make mass production in the case of war. So you have unbelievable long lead times. One missile ordered today may be delivered, not be delivered for 3 or 4 years. The 3,203 Patriots requested for FY 2027 expected to begin arriving until May 2029. There are not enough suppliers. Many missiles depend on 1 or 2 sources, for example, for rocket motors, energetics, seekers, turbine engines, casting, special chemicals. Just not enough of those people because we haven't invested in them. As a military, we're worried about bringing manufacturing back to America. How about just dealing with the kind of manufacturing we absolutely necessarily have to have, which is military manufacturing, and figuring out how to maximize that before we start bringing back, the sewing of T-shirts in the United States instead of Vietnam. We have only 2 companies in the United States today making solid fuel, solid rocket motors, right? So, and there's only 1 domestic producer of ammonium perchlorate, which is a crucial rocket propellant ingredient, whereas China can produce this in mass and indeed exports it to Iran. For years, the Pentagon ordered small annual quantities and expected companies to retain facilities, trained workers, and suppliers without guaranteeing them future business. Strategy, long-term thinking, long-term planning doesn't exist at the Pentagon, doesn't exist in our government. And then all of these companies have contracts with other countries as well. Not only the United States military, but also Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, numerous NATO and other Middle East countries all have orders in for Patriots, Tomahawks. I don't know about Tomahawks, but Patriots and other type of weapon systems. So it's just, the contracts are ridiculous. They've created complexity where they need simplicity. And the United States, prioritizes what we could call exquisite weapons, really, really fine-tuned weapons that will only hit through the window exactly where they're supposed to, versus kind of the dumb weapons Iran, Russia have. They don't care, right? And I think China does as well, where they just have large quantities of relatively dumb stuff that can inflict huge damage. And look, this creates real vulnerability in the Pacific. There are a lot of military bases in the Pacific that need protection, and China can overwhelm the fleets. It can overwhelm the military bases, the Air Force bases. It can overwhelm them with ballistic missiles and drones. So there's an effort right now to grow current Patriot production to 2,000 from 650. We also saw that Zelensky wants to start building Patriot projectiles in Ukraine. That would be huge. That would increase production. But it's going to be years before that happens. Right now, THAAD production is approximately 96 a year. There's plans to expand it to 400. Plans. Raytheon intends to raise Tomahawk capacity from below 200 to more than 1,000 annually. So we will see. We will see. And the administration is going to have to be willing to buy more stuff. Now, the administration has just requested a $21 billion from Congress for critical munitions replenishment. So hopefully that'll help and start driving all of this. And the Pentagon is trying to establish multi-year contracts, giving manufacturers more credible basis for investing in factories and suppliers, because it's not just a one-time order, but it's a multi-year order. So there's a real problem here. Now, this is not why Trump is not attacking. There's plenty of options, and Trump could annihilate Iran relatively quickly. It could incapacitate them. Yes, there might be a cost to pay in terms of their ballistic missiles and our inability to knock them down or knock all of them down. But, you would really make them pay, which we're not doing. And of course, there's always the option of putting ground troops and, munitions for ground troops. That has not been depleted at all. We haven't used ground troops in a long time in any kind of scale. Now, there's a flip side of this story which is positive. And that is that in the meantime, while the old line, military industrial complex is chugging along and barely producing anything and, spending gazillions of dollars of taxpayer money and producing very little, and it's very inefficient, and it's politics, not business driving production. There is a kind of a parallel track happening right now, and that is startups, Silicon Valley, type startups, privately funded by venture capitalists that are deploying weapon systems at a unprecedented speed, and you're building production facilities that can produce at scale the kind of weapon systems that the United States is going to need in its future. Anduril is a good example of this. It's a rapid transition from defense. It's had a rapid transition from defense startup and just nothing to actual mass manufacturing. So we can do this. The United States has the talent, the skill set, the entrepreneurs, the skilled laborers to pull this off, right? But if you just leave capitalism, if you leave competition, if you let the private sector fund these things, you get really good results. And if the Pentagon is willing to be flexible in terms of actually going out there and buying, tech-driven weapon systems. So, here's an example, right, of Anduril's. 557 days after announcing its Arsenal 1 factory in Ohio, that's less than 2 years, Anduril completed the first Fury autonomous fighter aircraft on July 27th. That's 2 days ago. It launched a autonomous fighter jet. Now, the company managed to permit, construct, equip, and staff the facility and actually build an aircraft, which is stunning, in 18 months. The current Fury line is designed to manufacture as many as 150 aircraft annually. At full build-out, Arsenal 1, the Arsenal 1 factory in Ohio, is planned as a 5 million square foot campus capable of producing tens of thousands of autonomous weapon systems. I mean, that's pretty cool. So one way you deal with Chinese airplanes is you send up dozens of Furies, autonomous planes, to knock their planes down. These are fighter jets. These are jets that can fight other jets. These are jets that are fly side by side with piloted F-35s. And, so these are going to get combined into existing manned airplane, and they're going to combine them with unmanned aircraft. And it's the revolution. It's how aircraft are going to be in the long run. So, this is unusual in the defense industry. It's unusual in the sense that Anduril announced exactly when production would begin and delivered its first aircraft on schedule. Think about the aircraft carriers that are delayed decades, or the submarines that are delayed years and years and years, or the fighter jets, the F-35 that was delayed forever, the F-22 that was delayed forever. Here, it's on schedule. That's Silicon Valley kind of thinking, planning, scheduling, executing. The company is applying something closer to the commercial technology model, investing private capital in flexible factories, designing products for manufacturability and building production capacity before wading through the entire conventional procurement cycle. So first you build proof concept, then you sell. Anduril has also got an agreement to manufacture thousands of a Barracuda 500 cruise missile, which is relatively inexpensive, much cheaper than the Tomahawk. Right? It's a surface launch production. This is ground to ground versus ship to ground or air to ground. Ground surface launch production is supposed to reach at least 1,000 complete missiles annually, while broader Barracuda capacity could rise into the high thousands as production moves to Arsenal 1. The company has also entered the solid rocket motor business, so they're competing with the two dominant U.S. suppliers. Now, they've had delays, and there was a big explosion on a test site, so that's tricky, right? Building rocket fuel motors or rocket motors is not easy. But again, this is how you win. This is how you advance, right? So none of this is to replace the Patriot or THAAD. Although the Barracuda's 500 could replace the Tomahawks. So American entrepreneurs coming to the rescue. American venture capitalists coming to the rescue. American innovation coming to the rescue. The marketplace, capitalism coming to the rescue of the Pentagon and its failed procurement model, which Eisenhower identified in the 1950s, and everybody has talked about over and over again. Nobody did anything about it, and then Silicon Valley decided to do something about it. Now, there's another startup, a company called Singularity. I thought Singularity would be an AI company, but no. It's a Los Angeles air defense startup. So this is directly targeted at replacing the Patriot and THAAD, or complementing the Patriot and THAAD. Now, it's only come out of stealth mode. Stealth mode is when nobody's ever heard of you. 2 weeks ago, it raised $80 million. It has 65 employees, including veterans of SpaceX, Tesla, Anduril, and Lockheed Martin. And it's testing internally developed hardware several times each month. Its explicit purpose is to build air defense interceptors that are much cheaper and much easier to manufacture than Patriots or THAAD missiles. So this is a direct response to the Patriot shortage. But it's still only a promise, right? That they're not shipping systems anymore, and yet they haven't even tested a complete system. But they are developing hardware, testing hardware, real hardware in real time. So, again, American entrepreneurs to the rescue, right? So if we let the Silicon Valley model, if the Pentagon embraces this, and we have a little bit of time, then I think we can build up an arsenal of much, much more advanced weapon systems vis-a-vis the Chinese in the Pacific, as to not to have to worry about the Chinese long term. Finally, actually, the two other companies I want to highlight, just so we're comprehensive. Another company is a company that was started by Ethan Thornton, who I met, and who is an Ayn Rand fan, who is the founder and CEO of Mach Industries. The thing about Ethan, he's an MIT dropout, not surprising, right? MIT dropout. Got a Peter Thiel scholarship, that you get if you drop out of college and you start a business. And Peter Thiel gave him a scholarship. He founded Mach when he was 19 years old. That was only 3 years ago. Now he's 22. He's a grown-up. He's turned it into a prominent defense manufacturing startup. It's valued, he's 22. It's valued at about $1.8 billion. And it recently closed a $300 million financing round from venture capitalists. Mach develops low-cost autonomous aircraft, drones, precision munitions, and propulsion systems designed for rapid mass production. It acquired a rocket motor specialist, X-Quadrum, for about $50 million. So it's now got established propulsion and hypersonic development capabilities. These guys are going to build hypersonic ballistic missiles. They won a Defense Innovation Unit contract for its Atlas autonomous strike aircraft. So it's building autonomous aircraft. It developed systems such as Viper, a vertical launched one-way attack drone, and Glide, a low-cost precision munition, I guess launched from an aircraft. And it has articulated an explicit goal, and I saw Ethan talk about this, of producing defense systems by the millions, directly addressing the shortage of inexpensive, expendable weapons. So, amazing. Truly, truly amazing. Now, they haven't deployed anything in the field that we know of, right? But, their vertically launched aircraft cruise missile is flown, and it is now, it now has, transitioned to wing-borne flight. The Army is funding the development, and it will be deployed at some point here. We don't know if any soldiers have received it yet, but, we'll see. Atlas, which is a long-range aircraft intended to launch from ships and austere sites, is, again, in advanced deployment, but it's still in development, but moving ahead. Venom, which is the, went from concept to flight-ready demonstration in 71 days. But it's still a prototype. And then they've got Glide, Stratos, Pike, and Dart, all in various stages of development. So this is still early, but huge, and getting funding from private sources, not the Pentagon, private sources to get this off the ground. This is capitalism at work, and it's beautiful to watch. And then finally, a weapon system that's actually used against the Iranians is Saronic Technologies, which is based in Austin, Texas, founded in 2022, so just not that long ago. Saronic, is now supplying the military with weapon systems. So its co-founder and CEO is a former Navy SEAL. He completed 8 combat deployments and later worked in technology investing. The other co-founder was an early Anduril engineer. So you see people are leaving Anduril and going to start their own companies. This is how you build an entire ecosystem, a network of defense contractors. The company's thesis is that America cannot compete with China ship building, right? We can't build ship for ship. So, and we're not going to build enormous ships. We're not going to build huge numbers of enormous ships. And what the U.S. needs is small, autonomous, and relatively expendable vessels that you can produce at scale, large scale. So they have a number of these. Spyglass, which is a very small surveillance and reconnaissance craft. Cutlass, which is a 14-foot vessel for distributed sensing and security missions. A Corsair, which is 24-foot high-speed craft over 35 knots, roughly 1,000 nautical mile range and 1,000-pound payload. Corsair was used to rescue a helicopter that went down, its pilots, and Corsair was also used to blow up a pier that Iran was using to launch, to repair submarines and launch boats from. And a suicide Corsair carrying, 1,000-pound payload blew up the pier. The Mirage, which is approximately 45-foot vessel, much bigger now, providing greater endurance and payload, and Miranda, a 180-foot autonomous ship with up to 5,400 nautical mile range 1,500 metric tons of modular payload. All of these autonomous. Its echelon software allows an operator to command one vessel or to coordinate an autonomous fleet. And these are actually deployed. Of course, here again, rescued the 2 American aviators and 3 Saronic vessels were used to blow up an Iranian naval base. So why 3, I don't know. But anyway, it's in production and it's happening. So, and Saronic is trying to rebuild the U.S. shipbuilding capabilities. I mean, this is how it happens. It acquired a Louisiana shipyard to manufacture Miranda. It is constructing initial Miranda hulls with private capital before receiving a conventional large production order from the Navy. It recently announced Port Alpha, a proposed $3.2 billion autonomous shipyard in Brownsville, Texas, expected to begin operations in 2028. Autonomous shipyard. Where are the unions when you need them? I mean, how can that be? I mean, they're going to do an autonomous shipyards? What will happen to all those shipbuilding jobs? It's terrible. I'm telling you, technology is just it's anti-human, right? It says the highly automated yard will eventually employ as many as 10,000 people, even though it's autonomous, and manufacture vessels far faster than traditional Navy yards. Investors are taking this seriously. In March 2026, Saronic raised $1.75 billion at a $9.25 billion valuation that was led by legendary venture capital firm Kleiner Perkins. So just unbelievable. So I don't want to leave you with this negativity about Trump not having strategy. He doesn't. About the United States not winning the war in Iran. We're not going to. About the fact that we're depleting all our weapon stocks. We are. But you know what? The bottom line is there is a reservoir of unbelievable talent in this country. And we still have enough economic liberty and economic freedom for that reservoir and talent to build the next generation, fill in the gap. And if we just leave them alone and we modernize the procurement just a little bit in the Pentagon, well, maybe a lot, then we can easily outgun, out-technology, out-innovate the Chinese. Not if we do it top-down. Not if we do it with 5-year plans for the Pentagon. Not if we do it old-style, big, defense contractors. Let these kids, 19 years old, Anduril was founded by Paul Malecki, who was also in his 20s. Let these kids build what they saw in the video games. The robots, the autonomous vehicles, the autonomous airplanes, the missiles, all of that. Let them build it. And we can overtake anybody, we can defeat anybody, and maybe this administration is clueless about what to do with the American military. It doesn't know how to deal with it. It's clueless about how to handle the American military. But hopefully some future administration will have then at his disposal the capacity to really defend this country and to engage in war when necessary, only when necessary, to win. And we'll have the weapon systems to not be afraid, not be worried about depleting, because we will have a defense manufacturing base that is built on robots and built on the latest technology available in the world and producing whatever quantities we wanted to produce. Right? This is what happened in World War II and what happened in World War I. We shifted, we adjusted, we responded, and we produced quantities of weapons that nobody could imagine. And the same thing could happen today, but we need to. I just did a course on venture capital and private equity. Venture capital and private equity will do it. They will create it. Together with the unbelievable entrepreneurs out there, they will build it. Get out of the way. Just get the frigging out of the way. Get the frigging? I don't think you can do that. But you know what I mean. Get the F out of the way. And let these kids build. Build. Create. That's ultimately what this should be all about. And it's inspiring to see Anduril. It's inspiring to see, Ethan, this kid Ethan, do this and be successful at it and crush it. Absolutely, unequivocally crush it. We need more of that. So venture capital and private equity is inspiring. And what we need is, and what we're getting is that being applied to American defense needs. And the world will change dramatically. All right, from that very positive, optimistic point of view, let's turn to Trump's tariffs. Oh, God. So, the tariffs that Trump did on Liberation Day. You remember Liberation Day, April last year? Trump's Liberation Day has, he put on these tariffs, reciprocal tariffs, all kinds of weird formulas for tariffs. I mean, complete nonsense. Anyway, the Supreme Court struck that down in February, and indeed refunds are being given, to American businesses that actually paid these taxes. We, the consumer, are not going to get any refunds, but the businesses at least will get the refunds. And so Trump decided to switch and to use another provision of the law, again, by all accounts, in an unconstitutional way, to bring about tariffs anyway, to replace the tariffs that the Supreme Court knocked down. Right? So they're using Section 301, and they're using all kinds of forced labor, accusations against countries and all kinds of stuff. There's a huge, there's supposed to be a report out justifying these tariffs. But basically, there's 10 to 12.5% on 60 partners, covering 99% of U.S. imports, replacing the temporary levies that Trump used after the Supreme Court struck his reciprocal tariffs down in February. So after that, he put on temporary tariffs, and Friday was the deadline for that temporary going away, and he replaced them with the Section 301 tariffs instead. Now, these tariffs make absolutely no sense, as we've talked about. So, but at least at 10 to 12.5%, we're not getting 30% and other things. For the EU and Taiwan, total ordinary and new duties are generally capped at 10%. For Japan, South Korea, and Switzerland, they're generally capped at 12.5%. Exceptions include oil, gas, fertilizer, pharmaceuticals, certain electronics, my guess is iPhones, some foods, and other strategically important products. In other words, you get a strategically important product if you, contribute to Trump's campaign a certain amount of money. Although many individual products are exempt, the affected countries account for 99.4% of total U.S. imports. The official rationale is these countries fail adequately to prohibit imports made with forced labor. So they are allowing imports that are being made by forced labor. Really? So they are formally retaliating against foreign labor policy failures, not trade deficits. Just to try to get around the legal constraints. But this is stupid and irrelevant and irrational, and this has nothing to do with forced labor. And again, these, by the way, this does not include all the tariffs that are imposed by other sections of the tariff law, like national security tariffs and things like that, like furniture is tariffs at rates that are national security related, right? Now, there are already lawsuits related to this. One company, a spice importer, has sued in the Court of International Trade. And their central argument is Section 301, which is the section they're using, permits retaliation against a specific foreign practice that burdens American commerce. It does not authorize nearly universal tariffs based on generalized allegations about countries' regulation of third country forced labor goods. Now, no judge has suspended the tariffs yet. So importers must continue to paying them, for now. But there are, I think, more than one lawsuit out there claiming this is unconstitutional and they're going against the law itself. The biggest confrontation right now is with Canada. This is separate from this tariff thing. Trump has imposed 50% tariffs on approximately $20 billion of Canadian goods. They cover products including beer, wine, dairy products, plywood, cement, hockey equipment. Ooh, I don't know. How are we going to do without Canadian hockey equipment? Even when those products qualify under the NAFTA, the USMCA, which Trump negotiated, they still get the 50% tariff. Energy, potash, and some critical minerals are exempt. This is so ridiculous. Now, we'll see. Canada's trade ministers come to Washington to negotiate, but nothing has really come of it. Trump said he wants out of NAFTA. He's not going to renew it. He's arguing that Canada and Mexico need the agreement more than the United States. Now, funnily enough, it is the unions that are complaining about these tariffs. The United Steelworkers and the International Association of Mechanics are saying, machinists are saying that tariffs are harming integrated North American manufacturing. And they're harming, therefore, their own members. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. India and Switzerland are pushing back against these tariffs. India says it will continue negotiating a bilateral trade agreement despite the new tariffs. Around 45% of Indian exports reportedly fall under product exemptions, but textiles and apparel are significantly exposed. Switzerland disputes the factual premise of the American action. It says forced labor is already illegal under Swiss law and denies that its domestic rules justify American retaliation. Swiss businesses also argue that the tariff leaves them at a disadvantage relative to the EU and British competitors, not that Trump gives a damn, right? So, we will see. Now, Brazil has a separate 25% tariff that's being collected on most Brazilian imports. That took effect July 22nd, and another part of the kind of reconstructed tariff BS, right? So, and then Congress is considering an even more powerful tariff instrument. So the Senate voted 86-12 to begin consideration of legislation targeting countries that continue purchasing Russian and potentially Iranian energy. So this would be a massive, sanction bill on both Russia and Iran, but not a broad, hopefully it doesn't give the executive broad tariff authority. Now, there's already a second investigation under Section 301 investigating excess industrial capacity. Excess industrial capacity is supposed to be an excuse why you can tariff. Whatever the hell, what does that mean? Excess for whom? Excess as relative to what? Complete subjectivism. It's targeting 16 major economies, including China, Mexico, Vietnam, the European Union, Japan, and South Korea. And that would be another layer of tariffs on things like automobiles, metals, machinery, electronics, other manufacturing goods. Funnily enough, just one more update in terms of tariffs. The aluminum tariffs are not actually producing the promised investment response, right? Trump has actually offered to reduce tariffs from 50 to 25% for foreign companies that invest in America, in America's production of aluminum, smelting. Rio Tinto, one of the world's largest aluminum producers, declined. Rio says it has incurred more than $1 billion in tariff costs on Canadian aluminum, including $773 million during the first half of 2026. But even that enormous cost has not made construction of a new American smelter attractive. Instead, the company has redirected some shipments to other countries. They're just not selling into the United States. Now, it hasn't literally incurred the cost. It's just that its customers have incurred the costs. So tariffs will make aluminum more expensive for American buyers, but they will not bring manufacturing back, as economists predicted. Now, the other thing is that with all of these new announcements, the system itself is becoming so convoluted, nobody actually knows what it says. Here's just one example. Domestic manufacturers of engines for cars and medium and heavy duty trucks are now eligible for tariff offsets for sectorial duties placed on imported parts, the U.S. Department of Commerce said Tuesday. The newly announced engine offset process establishes compliant rules for domestic engine manufacturers looking to reap benefits in line with those implemented in May for vehicle manufacturers that use imported parts. President Trump implemented a 15% tariff offset for certain imported parts for qualifying automobile manufacturers in April 2025 after ordering a 25% tariff on those parts. So 25% tariffs and then a 15% tariff offset for some parts, not all parts. In October, he announced a similar 25% tariff on parts for trucks. And there's an offset there as well for some of it. A manufacturer of qualifying engines will be able to secure an import adjustment offset amount equal to 3.75% of aggregate value of all engines assembled in the U.S. by the manufacturer. I mean, God help us. I mean, if we rely on God, nothing's going to happen, but yeah, God help us. All right, let's see. What did we want to do here? Next, oh yeah, DEA. So this is for Monday. On Monday, the Washington Post reported that a Drug Enforcement Administration analysis, a DEA analysis, concluded that President Trump's campaign of strikes against alleged drug boats has not, quote, reduced the amount of cocaine entering the United States. Huh. Who would have known that? I don't know. Does anybody predict that this would not stop the flow of cocaine to America? I think I did. Operation Southern Spear has targeted suspected drug boats since September. Note, suspected, but we kill them anyway. Killing at least 221 people. By what authority? Innocent until proven guilty somewhere. There's somewhere that principle in our law. God. Across more than 67 vessels. Though the administration defends these strikes as necessary lethal deterrents. Deterrents for what? A DEA official explained that tariff traffickers have adapted by shifting to larger vessels and land routes to avoid detection, stating when you squeeze the balloon on one side, it always expands the other side. That's a drug war. Plus, I'll add, none of those boats were heading to the United States. Venezuela to the U.S., that's a long trip. You don't do it in a little dinghy. The findings contradict Trump's repeated assertion that strikes slashed maritime trafficking by 97 to 98%. But these strikes are illegal. They're cruel. They are not going to change anything. And indeed, according to some experts, they actually, endanger informants and make it very difficult to actually fight the war on drugs, a war on drugs that we're going to lose. But, it's really crazy. It really is crazy. Ron Paul, Rand Paul has been out against talking about this and talking about the report. There's nothing. Drug trade is as big as it ever was. Luckily, overdose deaths are down. But that's probably because people are figuring out the right quantity and fentanyl and not lacing it with fentanyl, and people are being more careful. Unequivocal, overwhelming, frigging failure. Failure. All right, oil prices are going up. People are really, really worried about inflation. Now, I've told you many times, oil prices going up does not cause inflation. It's a supply shock. Inflation is a demand phenomena resulting from more money. But prices of some goods do go up. And the thing about oil prices going up is the prices of the goods that go up are the ones that appear in the CPI, the consumer price inflation, and that hit people's bottom line faster than maybe declines in prices somewhere else in the basket of goods. So you get hit with it immediately. And you feel it. So, there's a big outcry right now about inflation. And what the outcry should be, prices going up, this is horrible, and figuring out how to deal with it. But it's not clear that the price increases across the board that we're seeing in CPI, how much of that is monetary inflation? How much of that is within the control of the Federal Reserve? Anyway, there was a lot of expectations about the Fed meeting today and whether they will increase interest rates in order to fight inflation. Now, the market expected them to hold at 3.5 to 3.75. This is the rate that they pay for reserves held at the Fed. But there was some probability that they would increase. Up until a few months ago, the expectation was they would be decreasing because that's what Trump wants. He wants lower rates. But the reality is, with the energy prices going up, the market and with other prices going up, so there does seem to be some monetary inflation. But it's not clear that interest rates are the right mechanism to deal with it. What the Fed should be doing is reducing the amount of money or the amount of growth in the money supply in order to reduce overall inflation. Right? Trump told them to lower rates, and they ignored him. And right now, it's shifting in the Fed, and at least 3 or 4 of the Fed governors voted actually to increase rates. But the reality is, a lot of the price hikes are oil and tariffs. And the Fed can't do anything about oil and tariffs. Higher interest rates do not affect oil and tariffs. So I don't think the answer right now is to raise interest rates. The answer right now should be to shrink the amount of money or to reduce the growth of money, which they could do by shrinking the balance sheet, which is what the Fed, the chair of the Federal Reserve wants to do, and he said so. He needs to do it. They hope that by raising interest rates, they would shrink demand. But the problem here is supply. So, again, tariffs and oil shock. I think the market expected rates to stay put. They didn't expect the Fed to be so many Fed governors to be voting to raise. And the result of that was stocks went down a lot today. I mean, was it the Dow went down more than 1,000 points? Stocks took a hit today. Don't look at your portfolio. There's no point. You're not going to do anything about it anyway. So the Dow was down 2%, the S&P 1.5%, NASDAQ 1.74%, Russell 1.6%. So yeah, significant losses because of oil and because of inflation and because the Fed might raise interest rates and the fear that the Fed is going to raise interest rates. So as I said, don't look at your investment portfolio. Not a good day. We will see. I think the Fed did the right thing by not raising rates. I hope they don't raise them, unless something is happening. I hope he really does shrink the balance sheet like he's promised. And I hope somehow, in some way, Trump gets sense driven into him. He stops the tariffs and wins the war. That would be cool. Pretty amazing if that happened. All right, we've got a lot of questions. This is very cool. Thank you guys. You guys are doing great. All right, we're going late. All right, okay, that's fine. We'll definitely go into the third hour, and you guys already funded the third hour, so thank you for that. AI. So a petition today, I think, was delivered asking the government, the U.S. government, to slow development of AI. Please slow the development. And it was signed by 1,224 verified employees of frontier laboratories like OpenAI. For example, OpenAI chief scientist signed it, Anthropic CEO signed it, Meta's AI chief scientist signed it, senior Google researcher signed it. They identify real cyber control and recursive development risks, but they supply no solution, no triggers for how the government should do this, no real enforcement mechanism. What about open source models? What about Chinese? If the China doesn't participate, if only the U.S. slows down, is this signed by all these people because they want to guarantee that they are the winners? They want to slow down the competitors? They want to control the process? How much of this is what's called regulatory capture? Incumbent laboratories asking government to control the pace would entrench them and would restrict the competitors. This is so defeatist and running to government. The AI, unfortunately, right now is run and managed and dominated by a bunch of crybabies, leftist crybabies, who think they just want more and more and more government, and they want their own profits to be protected. It's really pathetic. It's sad. It's incredibly destructive. I don't know what you do. I mean, they're building brilliant products. I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying ChatGPT, Yaron AI, which at some point here we'll launch and let you all play around with. And other, I play around with Gemini. So I've got Claude, I've got Gemini, I've got ChatGPT. I love it. I think it's unbelievable. It's made me much, 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 much more productive. And I can see how I'm going to use it in the future in ways that are, just a dramatic improvement in my life in terms of efficiency. I mean, just producing the show. getting the news for this show, filtering what makes sense and what doesn't, finding stories that are not common. It's going to change everything. It's going to change everything. And yet the people running these things, the people who are creating these products are such whiny. I mean, they really are. They're real. Yeah. Anyway, it is what it is, guys. Let me see. What do I have here? I didn't have that. Let's see. All right. So let's run through this story. This is a story about cockroaches. Now, not the buggy cockroaches, which I personally despise. I hate cockroaches. Although I lived once in an apartment that was filled with them, and somehow I managed to survive. No, I'm talking about India's cockroach protests, the crackdown against it, and the government folding ultimately with regard to it. But so let's talk about that. I don't know if you've been following this, but it turns out, in India, to get into university, like medical, school, or really all the universities, there are standardized tests that everybody has to take to get in. And there's been a constant complaints about the fact that these tests are leaked to people who are insiders. It's not just college exams, but also government job recruitment tests. And, millions of young Indians, these exams are the only ladder to a stable career. These are well-educated population, but the way the Indian system works is you need to pass these tests. And what happens when one of these exams leaks, the whole test gets canceled. And you might be studying, you might have been studying for years, and suddenly, boom, it's canceled. And then what happens? And this has just been going on and on and on, and there's no solution, and they keep having the same problems. And India is suffering from really high youth unemployment, particularly among the educated middle class. So, people have been complaining about this. There was and then the spark that lit this protest movement was a Supreme Court hearing on May 15th of this year, where Chief Justice Surya Kant, K-A-N-T, like Emmanuel, called some unemployed young people and activists cockroaches and parasites who, unable to find work, turn to social media, journalism, and activism to attack everyone. That's what he supposedly said. He claims he's being misquoted, but supposedly this is what became this is what got out there. Now he says he really meant people who have fake degrees, but anyway, cockroaches and parasites. Anyway, the next day, a PR, public relations graduate and former social media strategist, Abhijit Dipke, 30-year-old guy, posted, quote, "What if all the cockroaches come together with a Google sign-up form? And the Cockroach Janta Party, CJP, a parody party, not a real one, was born." So they reclaimed the slur. The cockroach, the thing that survives anything, that you can't stamp out, became a symbol of resilience for a generation that feels ignored. When their social accounts got taken down because they were part of this movement, because the government used that tactic, they came back as "Cockroach is back." Tagline, "Cockroaches never die." They really played it up. And it grew. young Indians live online. So it ran on WhatsApp, on Telegram. It lived on Instagram, spread through memes, reels, get ready with me videos, and AI-generated content. And protests became viral clips within hours, pulling more people into the streets. So a massive demonstration, cockroach demonstration, started. The CJP, Cockroach Junta Party, Instagram, hit about 26 million followers. More than the ruling party, BJP, they only have 9.5 million. Or the opposition Congress, 14.8 million. So on June 6th, the first physical gathering happened, and in Delhi's traditional protest grounds. On June 20th, a one-day demo became a round-the-clock sit-in when protesters refused to disperse. On June 28th, activist Soman Wagchuk, I guess she's a well-known political activist, joined and began a hunger strike, popular in India since at least Gandhi, probably before. And that broadened the movement beyond students. On July 20th, a march towards Parliament was met with tear gas, batons, pellet guns. Roughly 300 students were hospitalized and about 70 were arrested. The crackdown backfired. The images of police beating middle-class kids swelled the crowds and spread the protest to Mumbai, Kolkata, Indore, Nagpur, and the diaspora. So the central demand of the protests was reform that should begin with the resignation of Education Minister. And Education Minister is very close to Prime Minister, Modi, and therefore Modi said no. But after 5 weeks, where he had been mostly silent, he broke. Around July 23rd, 24th, he announced fast track. He was still going tough, announcing fast track courts and a tough new anti-paper leak law. And then on July 25th, he folded. Pradhan, the education minister, resigned. The CJP called off its 36-day sit-in after ministers gave a solemn assurance that the police cases against protesters would be withdrawn and no one would be targeted. Why did Modi cave? Because these protests were not the opposition. This was Modi's own base. This is the middle class, largely upper caste, salaried urban Hindus. This is the demographic foundation of Modi's political party. You can't simply brand your own children as anti-national and start putting them in jail. So, it usually has to climb down. In 2021, it repealed farm laws after a year of protests. Now, we'll see if it's real capitulation, because as of today, it's not a clean win. The government looks like it's backtracking. On July 28th, the Supreme Court interim order let police continue existing cases and investigations, which the opposition says flatly contradicts the July 25th promise. The opposition is threatening to restart the protests. And the same order did not release the detainees who are under 18 and without criminal records, which again was promised. So, still hasn't really happened. We don't really know what's going on. One cabinet minister is gone. The government is publicly bent, but it's now trying to keep the persecution of these mostly kids ongoing. So that is what is going on, right? The government gives a public assurance to stop a protest, then quietly uses the court system to keep the coercion going. When you don't have the rule of law, you don't have the rule of law, and you can't believe the government. The impressive part of all this isn't so much the memes, it's that in a country where Modi has looked untouchable for a decade, tens of thousands of politically innocent kids prove that they can call the government's bluff, at least partially. So hopefully this will end well. All right, let's see. Let's go through this quickly. Okay, let's see. Let's move this over there. So here's the bad news. The bad news is that the total number of millionaires in the United Kingdom has fallen to the lowest level since 2008 financial crisis. There were 442,000 millionaires in 2025. 442,000 millionaires in the UK in 2025. Now that's down from over 1 million in 2021. Over 500,000 millionaires have either left or no longer are millionaires in the UK. Now, the number of millionaires in your economy is a good indication about wealth creation, progress, success. So this is a really bad sign for the UK. They passed new taxes. UK used to be a haven for foreign millionaires to come and live there. So millionaires are leaving. And wealth creation in the UK, as a consequence of regulations, taxes, government controls, the socialist government, has declined significantly. Right? So, this does not bode well for the UK. On the other hand, across the pond, in the great United States of America, the U.S. added 1,200 millionaires every day in 2025. Over 440,000 people became millionaires in the United States last year, accounting for nearly half of the world's new millionaires. Now notice, the UK has in total 440,000 millionaires. The United States, in 1 year, you get 440,000 millionaires. It's a pretty amazing number. Yeah. Right? A lot of this has to do with the fact that the stock market's done so well over the last few years. And the U.S. adds 1,200 millionaires per day, 450,000 a year. That's good news. That's an economic engine that's chugging along. That is confidence in the future. That's what stock prices represent. That is entrepreneurship. That's people starting businesses. That's people saving and investing. That's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Yeah. So bad news for UK. At the same time, things are going okay in the U.S., at least until the Democrats pass or the Republicans, who knows, pass a wealth tax. That'll reduce the number of millionaires pretty quickly. All right, here's another feel-good, good news story. In 1991, a kilowatt hour of lithium-ion battery capacity cost over $9,000. Should I say that again? I know it's tech stuff. In 1991, a kilowatt hour of lithium-ion battery capacity cost $9,000. I just have to comment on this. Tommy Roberts says, I went from making $40K annually to making $2 million a year. I doubt that. I'm not going to call you a liar out here publicly. I just have my doubts. And if you're making $2 million a year, you're being really skimpy on those super chats. And then he says, thank you, Trump. What's it got to do with Trump? Millionaires were being created with this number, at this rate during Biden. The stock market went up just as much under Biden. In 1991, a kilowatt hour of lithium-ion battery capacity cost $9,000. Today, what is it? 30 35 years later, 35 years later, that has fallen to under $100. A 99, approximately, percent collapse in price, driven by what? By government. No, sorry. Whoops. Driven by relentless innovation, competition, and scale. Relentless innovation, competition, and scale. Markets work. So from 9,000 to under 100. That's pretty amazing. Innovation, innovation, innovation. All right. And finally, the editorial board of the Washington Post wrote this: Argentina's renaissance continues. Javier Milei's market reform continue to pay dividends as the country receives its third credit upgrade in 3 months. This is the editorial board. Argentina's free market renaissance continues to improve the country's economic outlook, and investors are noticing, the Washington Post writes. Moody's upgraded Argentina dollar bonds and revised its outlook from stable to positive this week. That was the third sovereign rating upgrade for Argentina in less than 3 months, following Fitch in May and S&P Global in June. The message from the rating agencies is that President Javier Milei's market-oriented reforms are working. Whoa! When Milei entered the Casa Rosda in December 2023, Argentina was considered at dangerously high risk of default. Not even 3 years later, Argentina has escaped its highly distressed rating and no longer holds some of the riskiest debt in the global market. Milei's ambition is to achieve an investment-grade rating within 5 years. This change is not magic or luck. Moody's noted that Argentina's macroeconomic stabilization has advanced beyond the initial adjustment phase into a more durable improvement in credit fundamentals. Booming exports have also improved the country's prospects, partially due to an expansion of energy sector. By the way, when I was at the energy company in Austin, I was told by the CEO there that the fracking in Argentina has the potential to produce more oil and natural gas than the Permian Basin in Texas. That's massive. Massive quantities of oil and natural gas because they privatized it. They're letting private companies go in there and use it. This company in Austin is actually trying to buy, engage in activities in this basin. They've got the expertise coming out of the Permian Basin. It's expensive because a lot of people are coming in there, so there's a lot of competition. But yeah, energy is going to be massive in Argentina. Massive. They have so much oil, so much natural gas. And it's just starting. It hasn't even really kicked in yet. It's just starting. You can have LNG there. They're going to export natural gas, liquefied natural gas. So it's, amazing. Amazing. So the article goes on. Milei made tackling inflation a top priority when he took office. The monthly inflation rate hovered around 25%. Last month, it sat at 1.9%. Milei also tackled the country's persistent fiscal deficits and reported a modest surplus just a year after his inauguration. This makes life better for Argentinians. It also offers a model for other stagnant economies looking to rebound. Milei as a model. Now, that would be super cool. And that would be amazing good news for all of us. All right. So that, my friends, is the news for this Wednesday, July 29th. Went a little long today, but of course, I wasn't here for a while, so maybe we need to go long today. There you have it. Good, more good news out of Milei. We don't always count on Milei to provide a good news segment on the Yaron Brook Show. right? All right, before we go to our super chat, let me remind you all that the Ayn Rand Institute is a supporter of the show. There's a conference in Austin in September, I think 11th to 13th. You'll have some of the leading voices in objectivism today speaking at the conference. It's going to be fun and incredibly educational. You'll also meet a lot of other objectivists. And the Institute is offering scholarships to anybody under 35, under the age of 35, can get a scholarship. Go to aynrand.org/YBS, aynrand.org/YBS to apply for a scholarship. Alex Epstein. Alex Epstein is the number one authority on all things AI data centers, on all things that have to do with energy and fossil fuels and the electric grid and, the environmental regulations. I mean, the guy knows a lot about some of the most important issues in the world right now and is very much involved in politics. If you want to know what's going on, sign up to alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com. Finally, Hendershot Wealth Management, Hendershot with 2 T's, hendershotwealth.com/YBS, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. Check them out for particularly if you've, I don't know, maybe you worked for SpaceX a long time ago and you got some stock, which is worth a lot of money right now. Your lockup is coming up. When you sell that stock, and maybe you live in California, you can have a massive tax bill, capital gains. Well, they have a series of strategies to protect those capital gains, to make it possible for you to defer them and maybe even eliminate them. All legal, all legit, and without sacrificing, return, without hindering your ability to continue to make money on your investments. Check them out. hendershotwealth.com/YBS. Also check out my interview with Robert Hendershot that we did a while back ago on my YouTube channel on playlists for sponsors. All right, and I'll remind you to consider becoming Patreon supporters, monthly supporters on Patreon or on PayPal. It's great because then it's completely predictable. I know exactly what's coming in month in, month out. Become a monthly supporter of the Yaron Brook Show. That way you don't have to think about it again. Do it now. Do it right now. And those of you who still have questions, we've got a lot of them, mainly $20, $50, and $200 questions. Amazing. So thank you guys. But if you've got more $20, $50, $100, $200 questions, or $250, somebody was going to ask a $250 question, please feel free to jump in. I've raised the goal, what the hell, to $1,400, and which is a nice round number, and would really help this month's target, given that we didn't have shows for a while. But anyway, let's jump in with the questions. And we'll start with Not Your Average Algorithm with a $200 question. But Not Your Average Algorithm has a bunch of questions. He's got $200, $300, $400, $500 worth of questions here. So thank you, Not Your Average Algorithm. All right, let's start with his $200 question. Extreme self-consciousness acts as a direct conduit for misery. When you are overly preoccupied with yourself, your thoughts turn inward as flaws, regrets, and anxieties. This constant self-monitoring traps you in a cycle of negative rumination, which fuels insecurity and isolation. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right. And that if it's doing that to you, you need the help of a therapist. You need the help of a good cognitive therapist who can walk you through why you're doing that to you. I mean, you want to be self-conscious. You want to be introspective. But you want to be self-conscious and introspective in a productive kind of way, in a way that makes you better, in a way that makes you more productive, in a way that makes you happier, in a way that helps you resolve challenges inside your mind, rather than create more. And I think a good therapist can help. I don't know how to find a good therapist, but you can start with Gina Golan. Can really help figure all that out. You can, you know, you know, the constant self-monitoring. I mean, you really have to think about, why am I doing this? Am I worried about how I will be perceived by other people? Is that what's driving it? Have I got low self-esteem? Probably. Pretty sure you do. And therefore, I'm just looking for the opportunity to validate my low self-esteem by catching myself doing something, failing, doing something inappropriate, thinking something inappropriate. I think you're absolutely right in terms of the challenges that it poses. I think all those challenges are real, and they have to be dealt with, and it's important you deal with them. And I think the best way to deal with them is by getting professional help. If it's become kind of the cycle of negative rumination and insecurity and isolation, and it's all driven by a low self-esteem. Really driven by, I don't deserve it. I don't deserve the good I have. I can't really cope in this world. I mean, not as a explicit thought necessarily, and not as necessarily something you hold and know it, but something that somewhere down the road, somewhere in your childhood, somewhere in your early life, you have come to this conclusion about yourself. And you need strategies to overturn that conclusion and reestablish a sense of worth, a confidence, and a sense of self-worth. Hopefully that's helpful. Not your average algorithm. All right. I think I saw a $100 question here. Maybe not. Yeah, there it is, Michael. Michael says, I watched the rest of the Mike Israel interview. There's a lot more good clips to react to. It was infuriating because Mike was coming across as having the moral high ground, when Israel was actually giving the correct answers that would vastly improve human life. Yeah, I mean, I can't do the whole interview. I think it went almost 3 hours. But yes, there was a lot of stuff like that, and it is frustrating. And I don't think Israel had the right, he didn't deal with Dr. Mike right. And he didn't, in a sense, put him in his place. And he didn't challenge the very nature of, this idea of a moral high ground, altruism. He never challenged the very foundations of altruism, which is what he would need to do if he was going to, in a sense, escape the track that Mike was constantly leading him through. That is, everything you're saying is this and this, but what about other people? What about not being too arrogant? What about not thinking about yourself too much? You have to face that head on, and he didn't. On the other hand, he says a lot of good things in it. So, like, there's no such thing as the public interest. Although in the early part of the interview, he talks about what's in the public interest, and in the later part of the interview, he rejects that there is such a thing. So, I hope he watches it and sees the contradiction himself. One second, let me just. Do this. Yeah, had enough of that worthless stuff. Okay. Andrew, Iran's military and economy may be wrecked, yet its stature on the world stage appears to have grown. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think a dictatorship can have self-esteem, but it seems it could gorge on the blood seeping from self-inflicted wounds as a proud enemy nation. Yeah, I mean, it can. Look, I mean, this is the ultimate sanction of the victim. America is sanctioning the Iranians, and they are making hay of it. So Trump has done more to legitimize this regime than anybody ever has. By negotiating with them, by saying what nice people they are. One second. He's done more to legitimize them. And by not defeating them. Thus, giving them the feeling, and the rest of the world the feeling, that Iran can stand up to the United States, and is standing up to the United States. So whatever success Iran is having in terms of stature, in terms of its own perspective of itself, but certainly of the world's perspective of it, is all a result of Trump. It's all a result of Trump's failures. And this is his biggest failure. His biggest failure is that he's made Iran into something bigger than it ever was. And it's discouraging, disheartening, disgusting. But this is what you get when you vote for Trump. This is what you get. All right, selfie subscriber, thank you for the sticker, $50. That's amazing. Nature Observer, thank you for the sticker. Greg, and let's see, Bonnie, and Ryan, and Stephen, and Stephen Hopper, and then Stephen Kreisman, and Exit, and Greg again, and Mary Aline, and that's it. Thank you. All guys, thank you for the stickers. You too can do a sticker. A sticker doesn't, you don't have to ask a question, and you can provide value for value, support, trade with me. You're getting value by listening live. Deploy that to make a sticker, particularly Tommy Roberts, who said he makes $2 million a year and can't even do a $2 sticker. So, I don't know. Not your average algorithm. A 4-part question. Let's see if I can retain all this. In ominous parallels, Dr. Peikoff makes the case that the concentration camps in Nazi Germany weren't simply for extermination, but a place of prolonged agony and suffering in order to break the spirit of the living, not simply make them dead. We know at this time only a fraction of the stories of what's happening inside the ICE detention centers, where disease outbreaks and random deaths and other cruel and unusual unconstitutional punishments and conditions are currently occurring. But if what we are seeing on the streets of America, the unpolice-like systemic violence and out-of-control deadly use of force, and more the fact of the psychological unhealthy character of ICE agents, we can assume, we can surmise, the ICE detention centers are systematically not just holding places, but places of purposeful malicious torture. The philosophical drives that Peikoff identifies in Germany are present in a portion of the American population. I think that's right. And I think if you ask somebody like Miller, he would say yes. We want them to suffer and go back home when we deport them and tell people never to come to this country. We want them to discourage. We want to inflict pain on them, partially to send a message to future potential so-called illegal immigrants. You're not wanted. And if you come, you will suffer. If you come, there are very, very negative consequences. But yeah, there's a real, I mean, you can see it everywhere. And you can see it when you talk to people about immigration. There's a hatred, a viciousness about, ICE. There's just un-American. It's much more German. It's un-American. It's thuggish. It's thuggish. Right? And yep. It's really sad, and it shows ominous parallels. Even the United States can become a Germany. Even the United States can be impacted by the evil ideology or similar evil ideology to the ideology that drove the Nazis. Okay, we'll keep going. We got a lot of questions. This is great. Michael, thank you, Michael. Europeans visiting America for the World Cup often commented on social media about American small talk. Is small talk a phenomena of a more individualistic, optimistic culture? More collectivist societies are less open with strangers. Yeah, I think so. I think friendly small talk. Friendly small talk. And I think it's very much a representative of of American culture. Engaging. Just friendliness is much more an individualistic characteristic than a collectivistic one. I find the more collectivistic a society, the less friendly they become. And this is the reason. Collectivism inculcates a zero-sum mentality. Hey, I have to live for all these other people. That means I get less. I have to live for them, not for myself. It breeds resentment of other people because other people are a threat to you. Other people are a cost to you. A society of individualists, traders, tend to be benevolent because they're engaging in win-win relationships. They're engaging in mutually beneficial relationships, mutually beneficial transactions. Other people are not a threat to them. Other people are value to them. Americans very much see other people as a value to themselves. And that is not true in other cultures. Just not true. So that resentment of others is inculcated by collectivism. And we don't have that in America. I mean, some places have it. Some people have it because we're shifting and becoming European. But Americans have always struck me as friendlier, more benevolent, more truly interested in you because they don't view you as a threat. They view you as a potential ally, as a trader. That's what capitalism does. That's what capitalism does. Even the little bit that we still have in America. Clark, did Ayn Rand underestimate the ability of a free portion of a mixed economy to produce greatness while under duress and control? If we're running on 50% capitalism, India is running on 10%. Yet if you go there, new skyscrapers are going up all the time. Yes, I think she did underestimate. And I think objectivist intellectuals have, for decades, underestimated the extent to which you can keep going on a little bit of freedom. And how much technology breeds technology. And how much you can, and the fact is, India can get richer and China can get richer because when you add more because they benefit from U.S. They benefit from our advancements. Most innovations happen here. And then exported to India, and they'll copy them or remake them in some way or another. And, they can leverage that. They can benefit from that. Indians come here to school. Indians come here to be startup entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. Right? So we live in a country that's very, very mixed. On the one hand, we have unbelievable Trump cronyism. We have ICE. We have tariffs and an inability to win a war because we're not committed to it. And yet, on the other hand, we have a people who are generally unbelievably benevolent, hardworking, incredibly entrepreneurial. We have young people starting firms at the age of 19 that you couldn't do anywhere else in the world. We have incredible entrepreneurial culture. We have the leading AI companies in the world, not because government is there to help them, although they're trying to get government help, but not government there to help them, because of innovation, because of the little bit of freedom that they have. So it's a real split world. On the one hand, I tell you about the horrors of Trump and the horrors of ICE and the horrors of tariffs. And the next time, I'm telling you how we live in the safest America has ever been in terms of violent crime. We live in an incredibly friendly country, as long as you don't talk politics. I mean, while there are people who hate, for example, Indian immigrants, most Americans embrace them. While there are many Americans that cheer ICE facilities, as we saw in Minneapolis, most Americans resent them. It's a split country. And unfortunately, our politics raise up and make visible the ugliest part of American society. And the beauty of American society, the incredible nature of American society, does not make the news, is not the priority, but it's there. It's there. American companies would still hire entrepreneurs like that if the government allowed them. So the bias against Indian entrepreneurs is not on the part of American companies. It's not on the part of other entrepreneurs, Americans. It's on the part of the government and MAGA stupidity. The same is true of Israel. Everybody hates Israel, but the fact is, Israelis are welcome in the United States. People are incredibly friendly towards them. Israeli innovation is welcome in the U.S. MAGA and the far left can go to hell, and they still haven't dominated. They haven't taken over this country. And I think that's what tourists, when they came for the World Cup, discovered. They discovered incredibly friendly, incredibly prosperous, much richer than where they came from, place where people are nice, friendly, and rich. Arthur, I had a discussion with someone on the manosphere, and he was interested in objectivism ideas I was presenting. His rebuttal to me was, if you're a loser and are never going to have much in this life, how can objectivist philosophy benefit for you? Well, it can prevent you from being a loser. It can change you from being a loser. I mean, this is the insanity of these people. They think they are metaphysically losers. But to be a loser is a choice. That's what objectivism teaches you. To be a loser is a choice. You make yourself a loser. You develop yourself into a loser. But embrace the right values. Embrace the right, act out the right virtues, and you become a winner. You're not predetermined in life to be a loser. You're not predetermined in life to be a winner. You have to go out there and make it. And the fact that you're short and not that great looking, that does not determine whether you're going to be a winner or a loser. I know lots of short, not so good looking people who do phenomenally well. So objectivism will teach him to stop moping, stop feeling sorry for himself, and actually go and engage in actual living with a capital L. So, the virtues and the values are exactly for him, because they're exactly for people who think that predestined, that there's no other option but to be a loser. But that's just false. That's just a fantasy. There's no predestination. Arthur, again, $50, thank you. Two $50 questions, really appreciate that. I'm going to start a new acronym, T.A.R.S, Trump's Always Right Syndrome. He does something that's a bad idea, but you accept it because you don't like the bad idea of the other side, and you have an article of faith that he cannot be criticized. Yeah, I've tried to come up with different acronyms for that. I tried Trump Zombie Syndrome. Trump Zombie. He makes Trump Mindlessness Syndrome. Trump Mindlessness Syndrome. He turns people into mindless zombies. They just do whatever he says, support whatever he says, unquestioning. If you can come up with a different, mine didn't catch on. Nobody adopted mine. Nobody adopted mine. So maybe yours will catch on better. Maybe yours will do a lot better than mine. But T.A.R.S, Trump's always right syndrome is pretty good. It's pretty good. I like my zombie one because it's not just that he's right. It's that you become mindless. You stop thinking. Rand from Australia. Thank you, Rand. He says, at Ocon, you made... Ocon made a speech where I was on YouTube. You mentioned Ayn Rand's triangle that refutes Marx's view of production. I'm struggling to fully grasp it. Could you explain the triangle and why it refutes Marx? Yes. It's an alternative to Marx. I don't think the triangle in and of itself refutes Marx. She refutes Marx elsewhere, right? But so here's the Marxist triangle. The Marxist triangle is the idea. It's a regular pyramid with the idea that at the base are the workers, and they're the ones who really produce stuff. They're the ones who make production possible. And then above them is a layer of middle management, which do something, but don't do very much. They basically live off of the work that the base does, that the workers do. And then on top of them are higher up managers, and you get to the CEO, and on top, at the very top of the pyramid, is the capitalist. And he does nothing. He is just exploiting everybody below him. And at every level down, they're exploiting the people below them. And all the work gets done by the people at the very bottom, at the manual labor. If you want to see a stunning visual depiction of this, you can see it in the movie Titanic by James Cameron, and he has a sweep of the ship from the people in the penthouse suites sitting there doing nothing, and everybody down, and it grows and grows and grows, and then right at the bottom of the pyramid, and it's even filmed as a pyramid because it goes through the ship like this, and at the bottom of the pyramid are the people shuffling the coal into the fire to move the ship, the people who are doing the hard labor, the physical labor that actually makes the ship go. And it's a visually stunning depiction of Marx's pyramid. Rand says, no, wait a minute, that's all wrong. The workers can't do anything without managers telling them what to do, providing them with the capital, and allocating capital to where it's most appropriately used and where it's sufficiently used. The middle managers can't do anything without upper managers actually coming up with a strategy and a direction for the company, maybe going out into the public markets and getting capital. And none of those people can do anything without the capitalist making the choice after reviewing lots of business plans and listening to lots of entrepreneurs, choosing these particular guys to give them the funding to make this company viable. So for her, the higher you go on the pyramid, the more value you're creating. So her view is you should rotate the pyramid. It actually sits on its what do you call it? Point. And everybody, as you go up, in a sense, produces less value and is sitting on the shoulders of the people underneath. Nobody's exploiting anybody. But the greatest benefit goes to the people on top, who are the workers. They're benefiting from everybody else who has fed into this pyramid. Right? All right. So that's what it means. That's what it means. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know. Randall, sorry, not Rand, Randall. He says, Yaron, one caution. Cheaper lithium-ion batteries may not mean cheaper electricity. In Australia, they've enabled more intermittent generation, which has increased grid instability and system costs as they drive up the price of power. Yes, but that's not because of the batteries. That's because of solar and wind. And batteries are used to back up solar and wind. And if you could build enough battery capacity, it's still expensive. But if you could build enough battery capacity, then you would get rid of the intermittent nature of the problem. So, if you had enough batteries, I mean, it seems wasteful to me, but let's imagine you had enough batteries to store enough electricity from solar so that when it's dark or when it's cloudy, you could get the energy off of batteries, then you wouldn't have the intermittent. But that would require massive quantities of batteries, and it just seems like a waste. And to make those batteries, just really dirty. The same with wind and when it's not windy. So the real enemy is solar and wind, not the batteries. But also think about all the other things that lithium batteries are used for. Drones that can fly, 1,000 miles from their destination for military uses, for civilian uses. Scooters, electric vehicles. There is a revolution in motors that has happened over the last 10, 15 years, and it's only going to increase. We're going to get cheaper and cheaper, more and more powerful motors. And a big chunk of that is that batteries are getting more powerful and they're getting cheaper and they're getting, and so you can deploy them into all kinds of gadgets. So electricity is not the only parameter. And the point I was making was not cheaper electricity, just cheaper batteries. And then you decide what to use them for. Australian government should stop subsidizing solar and wind, and then we'll see how the market would actually use batteries. Again, it's not, and it's not primarily economies of scale. It's primarily innovation. And let's see where batteries actually are used, rather than where the government would like them to be used. All right, thank you, Randall. That's two $50 questions. That is amazing. Now we turn to our $20 questions, and then we'll go to the 5 and 10 and 2. 5 and 10 and 2. Okay, Liam, did conservatives used to put their capitalism before their Christianity? Now everything is inverted. Christianity and nation are replacing capitalism and the personal responsibility you used to talk about. Yes, I think that's right. In the past, they embraced capitalism and they embraced the founding fathers, and they saw those as consistent. And Christianity was somewhat in the background. They thought it provided them with a moral justification for America's founding, for individual rights, and for capitalism. Now they've elevated Christianity to justify nationalism in the name of religion. So these conservatives are very, very dangerous. But yeah, they basically made Christianity the primary and nationalism the primary. So this is the thing about religion. It will be used to justify whatever they want to justify at the time. So when they were capitalists, they used religion to justify that. Now that they're nationalists, they're using it to justify that. Liam, a leftist professor you debated recently said every billionaire is a policy failure. Is this motivated by envy or somehow believing concentrating wealth at that level is somehow unhealthy for society? I think it's both. I think it's envy that is rationalized by a kind of inequality is bad for society, inequality is destructive, inequality leads to bad economic decisions. And then add to that a real moral belief, an ethical belief, that if you're a billionaire, you should be giving your wealth away, that it's wrong to have such differences in wealth for moral reasons. The moral ideal is equality, is egalitarianism. So this is an abomination morally. So there's an economic argument, there's a moral argument, and both are to some extent being used to rationalize the underlying envy that is there. All right, not your average algorithm. Would you say German population in the 1930s was more obedient than nihilistic, while the German intellectuals were homicidal maniacs? I mean, I don't think you can separate the obedience from the nihilism, right? One of the reasons they were obedient was because there was a nihilistic streak, and they could see that their obedience would lead to destruction, would allow them to engage in the nihilism. But look, Leonard Peikoff is the expert on 1930s Germany and kind of the motivation. German intellectuals were, angry, fearful haters, but they were taking ideas seriously. They were taking the ideas that they were taught to their logical conclusion and taking them very seriously and committed to them. Were they also homicidal maniacs? Certainly the people in the SS and the people driving the Nazi state to the mass murders were homicidal maniacs. Whether the intellectuals were homicidal maniacs, I don't know. I'm sure they rationalized it all the way. The ugliness of it all, the evil, the horrors of it all. Harper Campbell, did Milton Friedman have more of an impact on the Carter and Reagan administration than Ayn Rand? I mean, probably. It's hard to tell. Alan Greenspan was around in those days. Ford administration, he had impact on the Reagan administration. A number of people in Reagan administration knew of Ayn Rand, studied, read Ayn Rand. Reagan was an Ayn Rand fan, right? But economics is easier. And they all read Milton Friedman, and Milton Friedman was a superstar in those days, and he did a PBS series in the 1980s. And, so I think Milton Friedman probably had more impact on them than Ayn Rand, and that's why the changes that we got were superficial and not the kind of in-depth changes that you would get from a cadre of people really influenced by Ayn Rand. Andrew, why is Trump okay with being manipulated by the leaders of Russia and Qatar, but has a finely sensitive tuning fork for Israel manipulating him into extending war with Iran by providing evidence of its continued misconduct? I think because he doesn't want the war with Iran to continue. So, first of all, Russia is a superpower. It has nukes. Trump respects power. He respects nukes. He has to respect a superpower. So his attitude towards Russia is much more positive because they're powerful. And you have to respect power. Qatar, again, they're dictators. He admires dictators. Bibi is a democratically elected leader who might lose, and Trump doesn't respect that. Qatar is not democratic. And Qatar bought him a $400 million plane. And they bought him gifts. And they've invested huge amounts of money in the United States. And they do the propaganda. And they've manipulated him. I think Bibi is not quite as good at manipulating Trump as the Qataris probably are. So it's more to do with Trump's psychology. And the fact, right now, that people like Vance and much of MAGA are telling him, oh, you're just manipulated by Bibi. So he has to prove them wrong by not being manipulated by Bibi or not being open to arguments by Netanyahu. So he's also needs to play off the anti-Israeli MAGA people. All right, Harper Campbell. It seems intellectuals across the West allow for a truncated market economy to function from World War II until now. It seems to no longer be the case. They're pushing us towards real fascism. I don't know. Again, which intellectuals? You've always had people who wanted more statism on the left and on the right. It's just that now they're more visible, they're more in government, particularly because they've taken over the Republican Party. But they're still, Trump is still deregulating a lot. And there's still some, embrace of markets in some circumstances. But he also holds some real statist policies. It's just, right now, we live in a place where ignorance and mixtures and inconsistency is the rule of the time. I mean, that's just the way it is. But, we're being pushed towards more statism of one kind or another. No question about that. James, does bullying and type of cruelty we see among children today a product of nihilistic German philosophy or altruism? Children don't read Kant. So, bullying has always existed. I don't think there's more bullying today than there was in the past. People attempted to bully me. I moved a lot, so I was in a lot of new schools. I was the new kid in new schools a lot. And there were bullies back then. I don't think there are more bullies now. I think there are more wimps now who don't stand up to bullies. So, you bully me once, twice, three times, fourth time, you'll get punched in the face. And even though I'll lose because the bully's bigger than me, I don't care. I'm not going to tolerate it. And then they stop bullying you. And I don't know if there's enough kids with that mentality today because, you should always turn the other cheek. Don't fight back. There are other ways to deal with bullies. No, they're not. The only way to deal with bullies is by brute force. So I don't think it has anything to do with altruism or German. They're bad kids. At every school, they're bad kids. And somebody has to stand up to them. And the only people who should really stand up to him, the only people who are in a position to stand up to him, and the only people who will make a difference standing up to them are the kids. Like, the kid who's bullied needs to gain a spine. And, parents need to be better educated and teachers. And so in that sense the whole culture is influenced by German philosophy and altruism that tells them to turn the other cheek and not deal with the bully. But it's also the kids have to deal with it. Arthur, does the prosperity and selfishness unleashed by capitalism make intellectuals anxious and insecure? I think it does some intellectuals, not all, obviously, but some intellectuals definitely. It makes them anxious. And it makes them wary because they are they're left behind. These people who are not as smart as them are getting rich and successful and prospering. What did they do to deserve that? So it creates real resentment among certain intellectual classes because the businessman is doing better than they are. And plus, remember, they're preaching socialism, they're preaching statism, they're preaching subjectivism and nihilism or whatever. And then the capitalist just succeeds. And it repudiates their entire philosophical agenda. And the consequence of that is that increases their anxiousness because these people are disproving their theories every single day. Harper Campbell, in today's world, do you expect most people to betray you or let you down at some point over time you work or associate with them? No, I don't. And most 99% of the people I've worked with closely, really, really closely, people who could have taken all my money and run, have all been fantastic. 1 in 100 has not been. Maybe it's not 1 in 1,000. Maybe it's 1 in 200. Maybe it's 1 in 500. I don't know. It's a very small minority of people that that in my lifetime have betrayed me or let me down. I mean, when they do, it's a big deal but it's not that many people as compared to all the people I interact with, all the people I work with, all the people I've been close to. It's not a huge number. All the people I've employed and worked with, I've had partners, I've had several businesses with partnerships. Some have succeeded, some have failed. Never had a problem with a business partner. I've had problems with board members. I've had problems with employees. I've had problems with friends. But, big problems, there are 3, 4 people in my life that have really betrayed me. Out of how many people I've dealt with? Hundreds. Justin says, came to show late, maybe already covered. What's your take on the current West Bank trouble? In general, should Israel be settling the area it doesn't officially annex? It's basically the fault of Jewish nationalists, right-wing fanatics who don't care about the law. It's the fault of the government that refuses to live by the rule of law and treat these people as the criminals they really are. When I was in Israel, two of my nephews were serving in the army, one on reserve duty and one as part of his 3-year service, mandatory service. And they were both serving in the West Bank. And most of the work that they had was caused by violence instigated by Jewish religious nationalist fanatics. And it was like heartbreaking. Here they are, away from their families, putting their lives on the line. And even when they have to deal with the Palestinians right now in the West Bank, a lot of it has to do with Palestinians being legitimately pissed off at these religious nuts. So you need to change government in Israel. Bibi and his nationalist partners have to go. They have to go. And you need a government that is willing to clamp down on these nationalist freaks, break the law, put them in jail for a long time, and reorient what's going on in the West Bank. I mean, I don't want my nephews wasting their time. I mean, I have no problem if they have to go into Lebanon or go to Gaza and deal with real terrorists, real threats to their own lives, their own family lives, to their own futures. But this is dealing with your own people. But the nuts among your own people who are get protection from the government. And that is horrific. Shazbot, joining late, I imagine autonomous fighter jets would not have the same maneuverability restrictions that pilot aircraft have. That should be an extreme advantage. Yes, I expect it is. I expect you don't have to worry about the G's, although you probably do just in terms of the physics of the instruments. So I don't know, but certainly you don't have to worry about the biology. So the things that a autonomous fighter jet can do that a regular pilot jet can't do. Of course, you're also taking away a pilot's judgment. Now, it could be that it turns out that AI is just much better than a pilot, but that's yet to be proven, right? You need some dogfights between a pilot, in an F-35 and a pilot in an autonomous jet and see who wins. And I'm sure they're doing that right now as we speak in the Air Force. So, and how do they work best together? I mean, that makes them an incredible force if they're working together. So, yeah, absolutely. Vikram from India. I was struck by one aspect of the cockroach protests, the mockery of Modi, the complete and utter disdain with which young protesters ridiculed him. That's great. Ayn Rand said ridicule is a way of cutting a serious evil down to size. Thoughts? Yeah, I agree. And Modi, and this is why Modi folded, because these are the people who should be supporting him. This is the audience that he's trying to appeal to. And yet they are the ones ridiculing him and making fun of him and knocking him down. So I think that bodes ill for Modi. But yeah, I think absolutely good for them. All right, rest of the questions are 2, 5, and 10. Let's run through these. We're on 2.5 hours already, so cool. You speak highly of Iranians today, but listening to your past speeches in Islamic totalitarianism course, claimed the opposite, that Iran never had a Western phase under the Shah. What changed your mind? I don't think I didn't say that. I've never said that Iran didn't have a Western phase under the Shah. I don't remember that. I did say that there was a significant portion of the Iranian population, even under the Shah, who were very religious. And I think that was true. And there still is a significant portion of the Iranian population today who are religious, who support the regime. I think it's a mistake to think 90% of Iranians want to overthrow the regime. I don't think that's true. I don't know how many. I think it's a significant majority in cities like Tehran, but I'm not sure that's true in the countryside, and I'm not sure it's true in some of the smaller cities or some of the more religious cities like Qom. Anyway, I think partially what's happened is people who thought, okay, we're okay with religion. We can do religion, like the people in the bazaar who supported Khomeini's revolution, have since become disenchanted. They've since seen the way their daughters and wives have been oppressed, or their grandkids have been oppressed, and I think there's been a change in Iranian society. I think the Girls' Revolution was a big example of that. But we've seen that. We've seen the Iranian young generation embrace many Western values. So I think that the number of religious people in Iran has gone down. Put it this way: the number of religious people who accept this regime interpretation of religion has come down over the last couple of decades. And the number was, my guess is in the 50s and 60s, most Iranians, a significant portion of Iranians were secular, and I think they became more religious in the 70s. And by the time the revolution happened, a significant majority of Iranians supported it. Noah, how is USA invading Iran different from Russia invading Ukraine? They both claim the invaded countries are threats and illegitimate governments who are not upholding the rights of their citizens. Well, yeah, they both claim that. But the question is, which claim is right and which claim is wrong? That is, you don't judge a war by the claims. You judge a war based on whether the claims are true or not. Right? And, it's clear that the Russian claims are false. Ukraine was a, dysfunctional, but it was still a democracy. Ukrainian people were moving westward in terms of culture. Ukraine was eager to join the EU. Ukrainians wanted to become more Western and less beholden to Russia. And they had I was in Ukraine many times. I don't know, many times, 3, 4 times, maybe 5. And what I saw was a country moving towards the West. What I saw was, a West-adjacent country. I didn't see Nazis, and there's no evidence of Nazis beyond the fringe that exists even in, in every country, even the United States, right? So you can evaluate the claims of the Russians. And then you look at Iran. Iran's a theocracy that beats girls to death because some hair is showing, and is developing nuclear weapons and chants death to America and Israel every Friday, and has killed Americans. Ukrainians have not killed Russians unless they were attacked first. Ukraine had no ambition to attack Russia. Iran does. It says so publicly. It announces so. It was trying to build nuclear weapons and has been for 20 years. It's built a massive array of missiles. Ukraine wasn't building a military before Russia invaded in 2014. Ukraine had no interest in building a military. It was focused on trying to develop an economy and trying to get closer to the West. So the question is which claims are true and which claims are false. Which claims are true and which claims are false. I asked you before, this is also no, I asked you before about the immorality of commodity traders, helping sanctioned countries avoid these sanctions. What do you say to people who say we need more government regulations to stop them? No, we don't need more government regulations to stop them. There's a law. You cannot trade with a sanctioned country. All we need is to execute the law. You don't need regulations for that. You just need, and it's not all commodity traders, it's a few rogue traders. It shouldn't be that hard to track down the rogue traders and stop them. So you have a law, you know, what do you call it? Execute on the law. You don't need new laws, new regulations, new stuff. You just need to follow through with what exists already. Zvika, thank you. Thank you for the support. Really appreciate it. $100 sticker. We made the stretch target. So thank you guys. That is fantastic. Hopper Gambo, will the next administration remove the 10% stake Trump has taken in Intel and these other companies? No. Who would do that? Like the Democrats will want to increase it to 50 and the Republicans will want to expand it. I mean, who out there, who is going to reduce it? Who is going to, no, this is a precedent now that it's going to take a very, very different type of thinking politically for anybody to remove that. Randall, Yaron, I find it shocking that 79% of Australians now have an unfavorable view of Israel. Does this reflect media bias, poor education, or deeply moral decline in Western culture? Well, I think the primary is a moral decline, or the elevation and the more explicit nature of altruism. So, you know, altruism everywhere. The fact that Australians, I think at this point, fear their Muslim neighbors, who they are afraid to criticize. They're quite happy to criticize Israel, but they're afraid to criticize their Muslim neighbors, even when those neighbors are violent and hostile. So it comes from the Muslim neighborhoods' fear from them, and it comes from altruism and a hatred of Israel because it's successful and projects a certain level of self-esteem. And it comes from, beyond that, bad education and bad media, which go together because both media and education are products of the intellectual class, and the intellectual class is horrific. It's really, really, really bad. And the consequence of having a really, really, really bad intellectual class is that, you know, people are uneducated, or people have wrong education and a wrong philosophy. James, what regulations did Biden put in place that made your hedge fund unworkable? Has Trump repeated any of it? They basically made it very difficult for banks to merge. My hedge fund was very much in the business of making money off of bank mergers, and they made it very clear that they were against bank mergers. The other thing they did was they went after crypto banks, and when they went after the crypto banks, other banks got caught up in the same. We didn't invest in crypto banks, but other banks got caught up in the same mess. And then finally, I'd say just inflation. Inflation was very bad for our strategy, bad for the economy, bad for our strategy. So I'd say those three things. Has Trump repealed any of it? Yeah, I mean, Trump is not going after crypto, quite the opposite. And Trump is not discouraging bank mergers. He's encouraging them. His regulators are encouraging them. And inflation is still a problem, but not quite as big of a problem. But those two things, yeah, Trump has definitely reversed them. James, do you agree with fraud that dreams with Freud, I guess, Freud you mean, that dreams are wishes or just random firing of the subconscious. I think they're random firing of the subconscious, but they're not that random. That is, dreams do have something, right? You often dream of things that you're anxious about. You often dream the same dream over and over again. There's certain anxieties that we have that manifest themselves in our dreams. A lot of us have the same dreams, which is interesting. Yeah, I don't know, but I don't think they're wishes. No, I mean my dreams are not wishes. They're usually anxieties, things I don't want, anti-wishes. Raphael, Yaron is giving a new amazing talk. It's amazing because I haven't given it yet. In Lisbon, about art, love, and human spirit. You should all join. Everybody should come to Lisbon to hear my talk. It's on August 9th at a jazz club. It's a cool venue. You should all come. It's going to be cool. I still haven't figured out what I'm talking about, but I'll figure that out in the next few days. Art, love, and human spirit. Vikram, I learned I'm going to be a grandparent. Oh, congratulations. I'm actually jealous. My wife is super excited. I am left wondering what the fuss is about. Do you have any experience, any tips? What should be my role as one? No, I don't have any experience, and I'm pissed off about that. I want to be a grandparent. And I want to be a grandparent for a simple reason. I love kids. I love little babies. I love it when they're one and they're running around. I love it when they're two and they're obnoxious. I love it when they're three and they really developing a personality. I love all those ages. And the beauty of being a grandparent is you get to experience all that without the kind of responsibility that you have as a parent and the anxiety and the stress and the sleepless nights and all of that. So I would love to be a grandparent. I don't know if it's going to happen, but so I say embrace it. Now, I don't know if you love kids. You don't seem to be that excited. So maybe you don't love kids, but try to enjoy the children, and you can do it at a certain arm's length. You don't have to change the diapers. You're not going to get up in the middle of the night to take care of them. That's what their parents are for. So figure out what you like about kids and do that with them, and leave the stuff you don't like to your wife and to their parents. That's the only advice I have. I don't know if that's helpful. Jacob, everyone here knows FDIC is green light for banks to take more risk, but government liability immunity for childhood vax manufacturers, and you don't even question inconsistent integration evasion. You can say that, Jacob. Thank you. Calling me immoral. That is nice. There's a reason why we have liability immunity, and we have liability immunity because we have an insanely litigious society, and we have a crazy litigious laws, legal system. That has to be changed. I've advocated for changing the nature of our legal system. I've argued for changing the nature of liability and what liability means. I'm a big fan of a book called Liability. I forget the author's name right now. And I don't think that the vax manufacturers should have liability immunity, but I also think it should be really hard to sue somebody for liability. And my guess is it's not going to make that big of a change. Now, it's not that people who suffered harm don't get recompense. It's just capped. There is a fund that all the stuff, the pharmaceutical companies contribute towards, and when there is harm done, it is paid out from that fund. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's how it should be done, because I don't think there should be it should be capped in that way. But I also don't think that our system is rational or legit. So our system needs reform, and until it's reformed, this is the best we have. I don't think banks are doing things on purpose to kill people. I don't think banks are doing things on purpose to bankrupt them. And I don't think pharmaceutical companies are doing any of those things. Could they be doing something marginally more risky? Maybe, but there's no evidence of it. Like banks go under periodically, and we see that, right? But I don't see the damage of vaccines. It just empirically doesn't exist. It's not there. You can make it up. You can pretend. You can evade by, making up evidence that is not there, or believing a group of, some disreputable doctors who make a living off of fear-mongering around these things. And that's fine. You can do that. But the facts that you presented in the past have turned out not to be true. So I'm a little skeptical about, this whole FDA things. All right, Arthur, why does envy and jealousy consume some people more than others? Is it low self-esteem? I don't know. That's a psychological question. Yeah, I'm sure it has something to do with low self-esteem, but why they have low self-esteem? It's the why, psychological why questions. I don't know. And does their jealousy and envy lead to their low self-esteem, or is their low self-esteem lead to their jealousy and envy? It's choices that they make. That's the best I can say. Randall, again, thank you, Randall. Keeps coming back with 50 Australian dollars. Appreciate it. Many Australians want to repeal net zero, but stay in the Paris Agreement. What's the strongest argument for withdrawing completely, and how do you persuade people who think remaining is harmless? Well, if you ignore the Paris Agreement, then it's harmless. But if you don't ignore the Paris Agreement, then it's placing limits on electricity, it's placing limits on fossil fuel production, and fossil fuel production is necessary for human growth and prosperity and economic achievement and success. But look, repealing net zero is a huge achievement. That would be step number one. And then if you want to be part of the Paris Agreement because it makes you feel good and connects you to the world, but you're willing to ignore a lot of the provisions in it, then so be it. The key is not letting the Paris Agreement handicap you, not letting it constrain you from doing what is necessary to achieve prosperity. And the best thing would be to leave and announce with trumpets that you're leaving, so everybody knows that you find this anti-life, anti-human, and you reject it. But that's a big deal for people. They want to pretend, they want to virtue signal by staying in the Paris Agreement. They really care about the planet. They really care about global. But the whole thing is a facade. The whole thing is a joke. Look at China building coal power plants at an ever-increasing rate, and they're part of the Paris Agreement. What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. Clark, apparently Elon Musk was in Epstein files, and he wasn't invited on the island because, as the emails say he's weird. Yes, I heard that. I heard he wanted to be invited or something like that. Anyway, he is weird. He's, incredibly productive. All right, we have to go through these questions fast because power is going to go out in my building in a few minutes. I was just told, so we'll do these fast. Neon says, The Odyssey was the worst movie Nolan made. Horrible acting mixed with average grade actor. Sorry. I'll let you know what I think when I see it. Neon, what was the exact time or moment that solidified Israel's relationship with the United States? Probably 1973 war. Maybe, I don't know enough about it. 67 was the shift. The United States became pro-Israel. 73 probably solidified it. Exit, a YouTuber called Smarter Every Day put out a video called The Problem with Capitalism. It has already gotten 1.8 million hits. He is an engineer and a Christian. You might want to take a look. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I've copied it. I'll paste it into a document and I'll check it out because otherwise I'll forget. All right, Harrison, how much for a philosophical breakdown of crudes? I don't know what crudes is, so I can't tell you. I don't know what crudes means. Jacob, pediatric Hep B vax, total group 147 infant kids, no control group, 5-day monitoring after each dose, post-marketing SEs include encephalitis, horrifically underpowered, no control, safe as a joke. I can't comment. I don't know. I'd have to go do the research. I'd have to go dig. But so far, every time I've researched something you've claimed, I found it not to be true. Increase past 40 years in childhood chronic diseases, eczema, asthma, allergies, child vax clinical trials, no control groups, short observations, many increased doses of vax. You will, of course, deny any connection. I'm not denying any connection. I'm saying the science has denied connection. I don't deny the connection. I haven't done the science. But the people who do the science, the people who look for connections because they care about childhood eczema, asthma, and allergies, because they're doctors and they care. They're scientists and they care. You're not the only person who cares about children. They care about children. Pediatricians who care about children have looked at the science and concluded you're wrong. How can you say no damages, injuries? Almost $5 billion paid by VICP since 1986. Okay, is that a lot? Since 1986, when the people who claimed emotional damage from Facebook got more than that, I think, in one trial. So I don't think that's a lot, $5 billion since 1986. And those are just the ones litigated. So many more out there. How do you know there's so many more out there? How do you know that not all the ones that happened are litigated? And how do you know that not all that all the ones litigated, they didn't get a payoff just to go away, rather than because there was actual damage from something actual. How do you know these things, right? So, I mean, you can make statements. You can